Have you ever read and studied the book of Song of Songs? Well, it's actually a little bit saucy, so today let's talk about love and romance. Over the years, attending church every week, I cannot actually recall any sermons being preached at all on the book of Song of Songs, even up until today. And I think when you read and study this book carefully, you'll understand why. And it's obviously a book that a lot of pastors don't want to preach on, talk about, and it's obviously a book that they obviously prefer to avoid. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be looking at chapter 4 of Song of Songs, and in this particular chapter, I'm going to be looking at the first 7 verses, and it's really talking about the man's excitement or the man's desire of the woman's beauty, and a lot of scholars tend to say that this is probably talking about the wedding night. So why don't we jump into this study? So turn with me to Song of Songs chapter 4, and we're looking at verse 1, and it says, "Behold, you are beautiful, my darling. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats that have leapt down from Mount Gilead." Now, we don't know what the veil looked like or what the veil really signified in terms of a woman's status in society back then. But in this particular part of the verse, the veil is really hiding the woman's beauty, and it's heightening the man's desire to see more. So you could say that by having this veil on, and by the woman taking the veil off and setting her veil aside, it's really showing that once she takes it off, she no longer has anything to hide. But obviously, it's really heightening the man's desire to see more, to see underneath the veil. Now, he then moves on to describe her hair, and he goes on to describe her hair as a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was told that my hair looked like a flock of goats, I'd be like, what are you talking about? And it's probably not something I would want to hear too often. So what does it mean by when he describes her hair as a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead? Well, Mount Gilead, or the hills of Gilead, were supposedly a chain of mountains east of the Jordan River, and generally a lot of goats could be seen descending down the mountain in the sunshine, and from a distance it is supposed to be a beautiful sight. And it's obviously saying, or the man's obviously saying, that this is a beautiful sight. Your hair is a beautiful sight. I love to admire it. I love to look at it. And apparently these goats were supposed to be black-haired goats. Apparently that was very common. So it could also signify that her hair was lush and flowing, as well as dark-coloured. So after he describes her eyes and her hair, he then goes on and moves on to describe her teeth. And it says, "Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn ewes, which have come up from their washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost her young." So the man here is basically describing that the woman has clean white teeth, just as sheep would be clean and white when they come up after their washing. And when he says all of which bear twins and not one among them has lost their young, he's basically trying to say that she probably has a nice set of full teeth. So the upper teeth mirror the lower teeth, so it probably indicates that she hasn't got any gaps in between her teeth, and that it's all a nice even set of teeth. So that's probably the imagery that he is giving there. Now, once he finishes describing her teeth, he then moves on to describe her lips. So let's look at this, and this is in verse 3, and it says, "Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your temples are like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil." So the description description of like a scarlet thread could imply that this woman, this girl, has thin lips, and the colour is obviously evoking some sort of desire in the man. You know, he obviously likes her lips. He's obviously enjoying looking at them. He's desiring them. He wants to kiss them. Her mouth is very desirable, and this colour, scarlet, could imply that maybe it's her natural colour, but it could also imply that maybe she's got some sort of lipstick on. Now, when he describes her temples to be, you know, like slices of a pomegranate, this word temple can also be translated cheeks, or, you know, like more broadly, like the side of her face. So basically it's implying that her cheeks are full of colour, such as that of a pomegranate, and a pomegranate it's usually like a bright kind of red type of colour, and maybe it's indicating that her cheeks are quite red, or maybe they're red because she's blushing, because, you know, of all the excitement and everything that he is saying to her is obviously getting her a little bit excited. So that's could be the way you could translate that particular part of the passage. Now moving on, we look at verse 4, and it says, "Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with rows of stones on which are hung 1,000 shields, all the small shields of the mighty men." So when he describes that her neck is like the Tower of David, it's really speaking of strength and dignity. And perhaps back then there was a custom of hanging the decorated shields of warriors around the outside of the tower. And if so, it could be referring to necklaces that perhaps enhance the beauty and dignity of the woman's neck. And it could also be a way of describing her character. She's obviously not someone who has been described as being stiff-necked, but rather she has a neck that is like the Tower of David. So she obviously carries herself in such a way that she has strength and dignity. And she could also be someone who is, you know, got a strong and courageous character about her as well. Now, the next passage, or the next verse, is verse 5. So let's move on, and it says, "Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle which feed among the lilies." So a fawn is a youthful deer, so it could imply that this woman is a young woman, and generally young deers or baby deers are supposedly soft and gentle to touch, and a lot of people apparently are drawn to them when they see them, and they just want to, you know, play with them. So it could obviously be implying that this man is obviously desiring, that he wants to, you know, touch them, touch the breast, play with them, and so forth. Now the emphasis on the twin nature, obviously that's obvious, but it could also imply that he's perhaps mesmerized with their symmetrical appearance, and their delicate and tender beauty. So clearly it is an expression of erotic desire on the part of the man. So let's move on, looking at verse 6. "Until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense." Here the man is expressing his desire to be with the woman. You know, he really desires to be with her. He declares that until the day breaks, they will give their love to one another. It says, "Go my own way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense." So here it's perhaps referring to the sweet-smelling, sensual body of the woman, and he's describing his desire to be intimate with her as he is surrounded by the luxury and sensual pleasure of her rich sense. So now in verse 7, it basically is a summary of, you know, of the woman. And it says, you know, "You are altogether beautiful, my darling, and there is no blemish in you." So he's described all these features about the woman, all 7 of her features, you know, her eyes, her hair, her teeth, her lips, her cheeks, her neck, her breasts, and basically there's nothing wrong with her. He cannot find even one blemish on her. And he says, you know, "You're just altogether beautiful, and that you are without blemish." And All of this really is also symbolic of God's love for his people, the church. Now, in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 25 to 27, it says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and without blemish." So here Paul describes the church is the bride of Christ, but instead of God seeking that physical beauty in us, he is seeking the beauty of our righteous character and holiness. Anyway, I hope you've liked this video. If you have, please leave me a comment below. I love to read your comments, and you'll see me again in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.